Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's stream. My name is Ariana. I am the co-director of the Consent Academy, an international nonprofit dedicated to teaching about consent in all of its complexity and potential. And I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you for welcoming me back, Aradin, and everyone who's here. It's actually really nice to see the chat kind of happening before I officially start the stream. It makes me feel very happy. It makes me so happy that so many of you are here. And if you don't know, I was away for a couple of weeks. There was both the Christmas New Year's break, but then I had to go back to America for 2 weeks for a funeral of a very dear friend of mine who died very suddenly. And I am doing better. Was not good for a little while, but I'm doing much better now. At some point later in the future, I think it would be useful to do a stream about like consent and grief, because as we've talked about in many examples, extreme emotional states, strong emotional states are things that diminish your capacity. Oh, thank you for the subscription, Aradin. That's so lovely. Thank you. Strong emotional states reduce capacity. And the more your capacity is reduced, the higher the risk is of doing or saying something that's not very consensual, or agreeing to something that you wouldn't normally consent to, etc. And I would definitely say that during like the most extreme stages of the grief that I was feeling, because this was someone I was best friends with for like almost 20 years. I dated them for nearly 10 years. They were very, very dear to me. It like really messed with my brain. They were like, I was doing a ton of really impulsive things, like things that didn't even make sense. Like a great example is like walking down the street and I saw like a pile of dog poop and my brain was like, stomp on it. And I couldn't I did not do it, first of all, but it did not, normally I would not even think that kind of thing. Or if I did, like you kind of get those thoughts now and then. If I did think about it, I would just be like, no, then I'd have to like clean it up and all this other stuff. But it was very hard for my brain to access that idea of like future consequences of the things I was doing. So instead, what kept me from stomping on this pile of dog poop was recognizing how disgusting it is. Like it was just a pure in the moment reaction. And this has been maybe like the most extreme sort of acute loss I've experienced. And so this was a very different experience of my own mind and my own emotional landscape. And even though we talk about a lot of this stuff at Consent Academy, and a lot of the content in the past has been written by people who are, oh my gosh, we're close to a hype train. I'm not even sure I know what that means, but this is amazing. Also, thank you, Deceptive Mirror, for the subscription. What was I going to say? Yes. And a lot of the people who work in the back end and our volunteers are psychologists and therapists. It's given me a fresh take on a lot of this. And yes, I'm very glad to be back. Thank you, Aradin. And I get impulses, to assert some kind of control, but I also think it was just that like my brain wasn't working right. Because like I was all over the place with emotions. Like I was like angry about people and like random things that I would never be angry about. And then I would just like, I started having all these like conspiracy theories where I was like, oh, maybe my friend isn't actually dead, but maybe they just like wanted to run away from home. And the person who they were house sitting for was just like in on it and like told us all. So it was another close friend who our mutual friend was house sitting for, and they passed. And I was just like, wait, was this maybe the thing? Also, all of these gift subscriptions, this is lovely. Thank you all. And yeah, my brain was just like, it was weird. It was very nice to be with my very close friend, Webb, because we were some of the people closest to our friend who passed. And Webb and I were like really in sync with the very absurd things our brains were doing. So we were really able to talk to each other. And it helped because having a way to process the feelings did make the consent a little easier for other things, but it was also harder. And then I was surrounded by a bunch of people in an extreme state of grief, including the family who I was very close with. And then they were having a hard time not just like saying and doing things that were wild and unexpected. And this was, interesting. It was an interesting time. So at some point when I've got a little bit more perspective on it, I think it would be cool to do an episode. Maybe I can see if I can get some of people who are psychologists or therapists to join us, and we can just talk about grief. But today we're going to talk about a different emotion, which is jealousy, which is another really powerful, very consent important emotion. And yeah, Deceptive Mirror, you said that what you're talking about feels like what I went through when my mother died. And I think that this is very much grief. We've, on our Tuesday streams a couple months ago, looked specifically at like autonomy in dying, but then some of that was reading about grief and different types of grief and how the people around someone who's dying of, say, a terminal illness need to be aware of the impact grief is having on them and the ways that might affect how much they are able to deal with the needs and desires of the person who's dying. And these kinds of responses, it's traumatic. And when you're in a traumatic experience, your brain is going to kind of go all over the place. So then, and I agree, Paladin Hulk, death really is hard to wrap one's head around. You said, I had a lot of dreams where I was grieving, where my friend told me he was still alive, and it was all a misunderstanding. Yeah, and then Aradin, you said you had a lot of those dreams when your mother first passed away. I've had a lot of dreams about my friend, but it was mostly like we went to like a Rammstein concert together, because like my friend would have never wanted to go to see that. And it was like I was being treated to it. And then I got to have the experience of going to this Rammstein concert together, which was cool. It's been mostly dreams like we're doing things together that we never got to do, but would have been nice had we had the opportunity. So it's been interesting. But yes, going back to what we're going to talk about today, let me make sure I've got it. I've got to just open the correct browser page here. There we go. So I don't know what this website MantraCare is, but the information on this page is pretty legit as far as I read it. So I'm going to put it in the chat because it's just going to be a little overview just for a second about jealousy, a little bit more in depth before we look at some of these Reddit Am I the Asshole posts. And I focus just on Am I the Asshole posts because while there are a bunch about jealousy in relationship advice, I felt like the ones in Am I the Asshole were a little bit more to the point because the people were being affected by the jealousy that they were experiencing. And so I think it would be really nice to read a couple of these. There's one that really blew up the last week or so on Twitter, because a lot of these get reposted on Twitter and people really had a lot of feelings, and there were like multiple camps that had these very strong opinions. And I feel like it would be good to take a look at that as well. So let's just look at this, what this website is saying here. What is jealousy? Some types of jealousy, sort of underlying causes of jealousy. And the first thing I want to start by saying is like jealousy is an emotion that gets a bad rap, similar to anger but all of your emotions, every emotion you're capable of experiencing is your brain communicating with your conscious mind. And it's giving you some information that you need to know how to navigate the situations in front of you. So there's no emotions that like you're wrong for having or it's a bad thing that you have them. It's just information. And it's your brain subconsciously processing things and trying to give some information to your conscious mind to help you figure out how to navigate a situation that you're in. So jealousy in and of itself is neither a good nor a bad thing. It's just an emotion because it's communicating something. The things that can get into beneficial or not beneficial responses is how we use the jealousy, how we respond to the jealousy, where we let it take us. And if we get jealous and it causes us to, damage the relationships or that we care about, or, be really unkind to ourselves, or to lash out in ways that sort of, again, damage relationships, or become impulsive in ways that aren't very helpful to us, that can be difficult, right? And you can see here, they've got this whole list of types of jealousy: situational, romantic, creative, envy, jealousy, pathological, sexual, attachment, sibling rivalry, and workplace jealousy. This is probably not an exhaustive list, but these are just some common types of jealousy we might have. And then causes here, it kind of lists some that I think are really good to start with, which is anxiety, low self-esteem, trust issues, and unconscious fears. And all of these things are completely reasonable things. There's plenty of anxieties that are not like an anxiety disorder that needs some sort of intervention. Like there's plenty of types of anxiety that are, again, it's your brain communicating to you. And if there's something that's really important to us and we are anxious about losing it, it makes sense for anything that feels like a threat to the thing that is important to us being in our life to be something that provokes jealousy. So let's go ahead and read this a little bit. Jealousy is a negative emotion, meaning it doesn't feel good. This occurs when a person feels threatened by the perceived value of someone or something to another person. You can feel this in all kinds of situations, from sibling rivalries to romantic jealousy and even team conflicts. Jealousy is generally associated with feelings of insecurity, inadequacy, and fear around loss or abandonment. So really, like, loss and abandonment are very difficult things. And it makes sense for us to want to avoid that as much as we can and to try to look out for, to a certain extent, things that might cause loss or abandonment. However, also talking from being a Buddhist monk and a Buddhist perspective, loss is an inevitable part of life. There's nothing permanent, right? Impermanence is a really central core idea in Buddhism and Japanese philosophy more broadly. Nothing is permanent. You know, there's like, I think in, it's a kind of a common sort of like inverse platitude, and it, I think, was in the Netflix adaptation of The Sandman, but there's like this whole idea of like, you know, happy endings mean that the author knew when to end the story because all endings are tragic if the story goes on long enough, right? Like, you know, the great romance, you know, the people are both going to die eventually or something. Yeah, everything changes but death and taxes. But I would say even those things change. Like what gets taxed, who gets taxed the most, and then like ways we die, ages at which we die. Anyway, so you can't hold on to anything forever, and you can cause more pain to yourself by being too heavily attached to something. So Buddhist ideas of attachment don't necessarily, it depends on the lineage. So I really am only going to speak to, you know, generally speaking, Mahayana Buddhism and Japanese Mahayana Buddhism, and then specifically Shingon Buddhism, which is Vajrayana type of Buddhism, which means just like esoteric. Attachments are not inherently bad, and also attachments are not the same thing as caring about something or being invested in something. Attachments is when you basically allow your most inner self to become so desperately in need of something that you start to tell yourself stories, for example, that like this thing is going to be forever, and if it's not forever, that means nothing will ever be good again, or like I can't survive without this thing, or whatever. And if we lose that thing, or the thing doesn't match our expectations, then we're going to feel a lot more than just pain. We're going to suffer. Because in Buddhism, there's this idea that like pain is inevitable, it's part of life, but suffering is, you know, and these are not great translations. You know, like I've read plenty of things on the internet of people being like so offended about this idea of like suffering being optional, because they're like, well, I have this condition and it means I will suffer endlessly, and how dare somebody tell me that this is an optional thing. That's not what Buddhism is trying to say whatsoever. This is translations of concepts from like basically ancient India that have gone through many iterations and do not translate well to the English language. So it's not to say that suffering, as in like intensity of pain, it means something that's far more long lasting, the kind of thing that could last through, karmic rebirths, right? But anyway, Paladin Hulk, you said, even if permafrost is impermanent, there is no such thing. Yeah. And Aradin, so a lot of the things that people tend to tell themselves about romantic relationships. Exactly. A lot of things we tend to tell ourselves about romantic relationships. So, like, my friend dying, that hurt. That was incredibly painful. It still is painful, but the suffering part would come along if I never allowed myself to say accept that my friend was really gone, or if I kept trying to convince myself that actually my friend is still out there somewhere and I someday we'll be reunited, or maybe if I start to blame myself for it, if I try to say to myself it's my fault in some different ways, or I start to really like focus on some other part, like if I don't process it and integrate it into my understanding of the world and into myself, and I stay stuck in this like acute space of the pain of it, and I keep trying to either avoid that pain and I never process it, or I just like kind of live off of the pain. That would be an example of this kind of suffering. And we can do that with romantic relationships a lot. We tend to tell ourselves, like, if this person leaves me, that means I'm all these terrible things, or the world is this kind of thing. This can be painful. However, setting aside those very extreme things, jealousy is still, a perfectly useful emotion, because it's also a little bit of your brain saying, threat detected. I think there's something that might threaten the security of this thing that's very important to me, or this person that's very important to me in my life, and I need to respond to this. However, there are toxic types of jealousy. There is jealousy that goes way too far, that goes into things being non-consensual, like our desire to control other people. And there's also jealousy that can cause us to respond in ways that are not very consensual or just hurt us. Okay, so let's continue a little bit. Jealousy is something used as fuel for performance appreciation. When someone feels threatened by another's success, they will try harder to prove themselves. This can be good work. This can be through good work ethic and results. Sorry. I like that, Whistler. Suffering equals pain times resistance by Shinzen Young. Yeah, I think that's a nice way to put it. And so what are some types? We have situational. This is a type of jealousy that can be the result of a person feeling insecure about themselves, their abilities, or whether they are, quote, good enough for someone. Situational jealousy is something that most people experience at some point in life, but the point is that it doesn't have to define you. If jealousy becomes too much and starts to impact your everyday activities, there may need to be an intervention. So an example of this might be like, if I'm a high school student and I'm in chorus and I would like to, be in the sort of like first chair chorus positions, and I audition for that and I don't get it, but these other people do, I might feel really jealous. I might feel like I both want the position that they have, but I also might start to feel like either these people don't deserve what they got, or the fact that I didn't get it is some sort of proof about how bad I am. Or it could be something like proof like how unfair the world is in general, or anything it starts to lead you to being like, this is some 100% absolute thing, is when it gets into tricky territory. And yeah, imposter syndrome could fall into some of this. Romantic jealousy, this is a type of jealousy occurs when one partner feels threatened by another romantic interest. It can be either real or imagined. Reading more into text messages than necessary, for example. It's normal for your romantic partner, if you have one, to have friends and to have coworkers, including people who are of the same gender as you and whatever gender your partner is attracted to. And trying to say you cannot have any friends. Like if I was dating, a heterosexual man and I wanted to say to him, hey, you're not allowed to have any female friends, That's not good. That's not very consensual. That's me trying to control this other person's autonomy. And instead, what I would need to talk about is, hey, I can feel jealous if I feel like you are prioritizing other, women over spending time with me. So I want to create a relationship agreement around how we're going to navigate this. And also, like, we should do some check-ins. Like, of course, you're going to have your friends. I'm not going to tell you can't be friends with these people. And also, just like, if you're thinking about cheating or something, like, let's talk through it rather than go down that road, etc., etc. But you would need to actually talk openly about the feelings that you're having. Because if I try to limit my partner from who they can and can't be friends with, there's been a couple of times in my life where I didn't want to limit who my partner could or couldn't be friends with, but I might set a boundary related to it. I might say, hey, I don't really love how it feels for me to hang out with this person. And I don't really love the way that environment feels or the interactions. So you can be friends with this person. It's no problem. I'm just not going to hang out with you if you're also hanging out with them. Or I've had situations where there was somebody who I had sort of like complicated feelings around, and a partner of mine wanted to spend some time with them. And I said that that's fine, of course, but also just like, I don't want to know anything about it. Please don't talk to me about this person. You can tell me you're going to hang out with them, but like, I don't want to know anything more than that. I don't want to think about this person. And that's me setting a boundary. That's not me saying, you're not allowed to do this. This is me saying, here's the amount I'm willing to participate in this situation. Which, this is difficult, right? Like, this is not a skill I was just like born with. Like, I had to learn how to work through these feelings because the jealousy was communicating to me. And I had to learn how to use those communications. And it wasn't necessarily jealousy. Sometimes it was like annoyance or like heartache or like stress. Like with the friend, I had an ex of mine who had a friend. I hated this friend's influence on my ex. I hated the way my ex would talk to me and act when this friend was around. He was be totally different. And I was just like, you know what? You can stay friends with this guy. I think this guy's an asshole. If you're going to hang out with him, I'm not going to hang out with you. Like, you're free to hang out with him as much as you want. But if you two are hanging out together, I'm not going to be there for that. I'm going to go do something else. And that had nothing to do with jealousy. It had everything to do with, I think that guy's an asshole. I don't feel welcome. And I don't like how it is to be in this space. But that's me setting a boundary. It's not me saying, you can't be friends with this person. It's me saying, I don't want to be a part of that friendship as well. So this is one of the things that's really important to remember is the difference between boundaries and ultimatums, or boundaries and being controlling. It's important that your boundaries, it's not a boundary if you try to say what another person can't do. A boundary is where you say, if you're going to do these things, this is where my participation in the situation ends. This is where I'm comfortable being involved. And if it goes beyond this, I'm going to remove myself. That's a boundary. If I start to threaten, like, hey, if you go ever talk to this person again, I'm going to, throw all of your shirts in a fire or something, that's not a boundary. That's not good. Don't do that. That's not very consensual, right? However, a lot of the time what's happening there is the person is getting information from their emotions and then acting in a way that doesn't actually support what they're trying to support. If I am so jealous of somebody and I say to my partner, hey, if I see that you're texting her again, I'm going to like burn all of your stuff. Right? There's like a common thing we like see in movies and like, it's kind of a stereotypical thing, or I'm going to throw all your stuff on the yard. That's not very consensual. It might feel cathartic. It might feel good. If you caught someone cheating and you're going to kick them out of the house, it might feel like, yeah, power. I'm going to like throw all your shit in the yard. And like, pretty sure like I've like known people who've done this, right? But it's not very consensual behavior. And materialism is bad, burn all their stuff. I mean, yes, Paladin Hulk, but also like there's a difference between just like materialism and things that are like, say, sentimental or like, you need in order to survive and whatever. But I digress. That is a tangent. What I'm trying to say is that feeling of jealousy there should not lead me to threaten to do any kind of harm to my partner's stuff or anything like that. It should lead me to say, hey, listen, I really am uncomfortable when you talk to this person, especially when you're texting them, say, late at night. And instead of spending time with me when we're in bed together, you know, and so it makes me feel really disrespected. You can be friends with this person, but if you continue to text them sexy messages, I'm going to no longer want to date you. It feels disrespectful to me. Yeah, if you don't have any stuff hacking to watch the stream, good. So let's read a couple more. Creative jealousy. This is when a person feels like their creation, idea, or work has been stolen by another. They also feel the need to seek revenge, or they may. I feel like it's important to put may here. In order not to lose, this can be very common, especially among artists who go through many creative blocks and moments of self-doubt. Creative jealousy usually only occurs if somebody else is already catching attention for similar works, that it starts making them question themselves more than usual. And, you know, this is something where it's like, if you feel like someone stole your idea and they got a bunch of attention for it and you didn't, it makes sense to be jealous. It's not even necessarily jealous there, especially if they like did actually steal your idea. Like that, what this paragraph doesn't say is that does actually happen among artist groups. It's one of the reasons why a lot of like artist communes and like, you know, collectives and stuff, they're just full of drama. One, because everybody tends to date each other and date each other's exes, and there's drama there, and there's cheating, and there's scandals. But then there's also the fact that people do legitimately scoop each other's ideas. This happens in journalism as well. This happens all over the place. And it's rough and not very consensual. Okay, so one other type I'm going to read two more and I feel like are really useful here. So sexual jealousy, this is when a person feels suspicious or threatened due to their partner's sexual activities, either real or imagined. This is usually caused by insecurities and feelings of inadequacy, which can be brought about by situational jealousy. So this is not meant to be like gaslighting in the sense that it's not supposed to try to say like, if you're feeling jealousy, it's because you're just imagining things because you're insecure. It's saying sometimes it could be that you're imagining things, and sometimes it could be your partner is actually cheating on you. But the response, the feeling of jealousy in reaction to the partner cheating on you is versus, say, just like pure anger or hurt or, you know, whatever, is often caused by underlying insecurities or feelings of inadequacy. And the jealousy can come about too because you might think like, okay, why am I not good enough that I could keep this person all to myself? Now, there's a lot we could talk about in sort of polyamory theory and sort of like moving away from certain more maybe extreme ideas within conventional monogamy. You know, because for example, I've had people ask me recently several times about if Charlie is jealous about anything. Like I plan to get a memorial tattoo of my friend. I have some of the cremation ashes and you can get them put into tattoo ink. And I really want to do that. It's really important to me. And some of our other friends are going to do it too. And my dad asked me, like, is Charlie jealous? How does Charlie feel about this? The question, genuinely, I understand why my dad would ask it because it's like very mainstream, but it is also a question that makes me uncomfortable for two reasons. One, if Charlie were jealous of my dead best friend / ex, we would have bigger problems. And two, if Charlie were the kind of person who would be interested in like curtailing my bodily autonomy, we would have bigger problems. And so both of those, the parts are kind of underlying the question, which is like on some level, it feels logical that if you have anybody in your past that you cared about, that you still care about to any degree, that should be a source of jealousy. That should be a source of creating an insecurity and feeling that things might not be perfect. But let's be completely honest, that's not realistic. Almost everybody I loved in the past, I still care about to some extent. I'm not in love with those people anymore, but the shape of my feelings about them changed. And maybe, I feel like less charmed and maybe kind of disillusioned by them. But there's still part of me that would care about this person forever. Maybe there's like one or two people in my past that I like, no, I can go to hell, I don't care. But for the most part, like that makes sense. It's the same with like friends. I think another way to express this is like, think about friends you had in the past that you're not friends with anymore. Especially if you stopped being friends with them, not because of a big fallout or because of some drama or anything went wrong, but simply because people moved away or you two kind of stopped being very compatible as friends, or you realized like you just weren't necessarily that good for each other as friends or whatever. Probably still on some level, though, you appreciate the memories you have of that time that you spent with this friend, and you still care about them to some degree. And that's very normal. And if your friends, your current friends, were like jealous because a friend you stopped being friends with many years ago was someone you still like occasionally thought about and had pleasant memories about, that would be really weird, right? Let's see what the chat is saying. So Deceptive Mirror says, it takes time to realize that a partner cheating is never about you, but about their inability to remain faithful in a relationship that isn't open or poly. And polyethical non-monogamy isn't cheating. Absolutely. It is, however, possible to cheat within poly or ethical non-monogamy. It depends on the relationship agreements you have. If you have, for example, a rule around like, hey, if you're going to have sex with someone who isn't me, you need to use barriers, and then you find out that your partner didn't use barriers, that would be a big violation. Or if you say like, hey, we're going to agree that neither of us are going to become romantically involved with any of each other's exes, and they do that, difficult. Yeah. Anyway, Reverend Mort, you said, I feel like this is overly reductive. People cheat for many reasons, and far from all of them boil down. People cheat for many reasons, and far from all of them boil down to variance of cheater is unknowingly poly. And likewise, it isn't entirely possible to cheat within poly and open relationships. Haradin, you said, or you go into a deep depression and withdraw from the world for the most part. There's also that, yes. Deceptive Mirror, Reverend Mort, unknowingly poly and cheating isn't an excuse either. If you discover you are poly, do not communicate it to your partner and discuss then go out and fuck some rando. That's cheating. But communication must be had and explored and stuff. And it's also true that like one of the underlying ideas in polyamory, at least as far as I understand it, having been formerly polyamorous person for many years, is that like this idea of like it's possible to love more than one person at the same time and it not diminish your ability to love the other people. So like if I'm really in love with Charlie, but I also find myself falling in love with someone else, think of love triangles, right? Like every love triangle in any book or story or movie, and the fact that they're so relatable and they like sell more copies of whatever book if they put a love triangle into it usually, is pretty good exemplifier of the fact that a lot of us are capable of deeply loving more than one person at the same time. The question I often think people should ask about whether or not they should practice polyamory is not, can I be romantically or sexually attracted to more than one person at the same time? Because I would say, generally speaking, the answer is probably yes. That's not true of everybody, but I would say it's probably more common than uncommon. However, the question often I feel should be, can I be good? In a way, can I show up in the relationship in the ways that I feel are right to show up? And can more than one person feel given to and supported by me at the same time? For me, the answer to that turned out to be not really. Uh, um, Snackmaster, you said, I'm going to read the other comments, but the question people should ask before practicing polyamory should be, how do I feel about spending eternity in hellfire? I mean, if we're working within certain religious worldviews, then sure, but that's not really what we're talking about. Yeah, polyamory is, and like the Bible definitely, if we're talking about like the Bible, for example, does talk about people, many characters in the Bible have multiple spouses. And see, I don't know. I mean, yeah. I think, Snackmaster, I'm going to ask that we move away from this discussion of hell and hellfire. If you want to continue having it, I'm going to ask that you go have that somewhere else. Because it's not really something that works within the framework that we talk about. It's going to start a totally different kind of conversation and not one that I really want to have at the moment. And thank you. So then, what did you say? Deceptive mirror, communication must be had and explored. Paladin Hulk, girls that date me can't hide playing cards up their sleeves. That's cheating. I enjoy your joke. Yes. And Deceptive Mirror, there's a part of Reddit I wished I hadn't discovered, Cake Eaters, where people are happy in their close monogamous relationship but cheat anyway. Yeah, I mean, I think that cheating is still, just generally speaking, an incredible violation and is not it's very non-consensual. Aradin, love triangles are an easy drama engine as well for TV shows, books, movies. Yeah. So I would say that, like, love triangles is a good example of how common it is for you to feel genuine romantic love and sexual interest in more than one person at the same time. But if we're talking about like the practice of it, I think a lot of people get into polyamory or consensual non-monogamy and are not very good at it. Just like we see a lot of this in our work at Consent Academy, because people can be really focused on the like, am I enjoying this? And not necessarily, is this allowing me to be good to people? Am I actually able to show up for people? Am I actually able to be supportive of people? Anyway, Reverend Mort, you said some people really just get off of the thrill of sneaking around. Those people aren't particularly nice to people when they pursue that. People, yeah. I mean, if that's like a kink, it's still one of those things, like no matter what sort of things that you desire, it's got to be consensual. So you've got to talk about it first. And you got to everybody's got to be in agreement with it. So like, if my, kink is seeing my partner cry, right? Like, this was even in Ted Lasso. If you haven't seen Ted Lasso, there's a scene where this woman is watching a video and it's like turning her on of her partner like crying, retiring from his job. And she is like really turned on by his emotional vulnerability. That's not a very common paraphilia, but it is one that is not that rare either, which is that a lot of people get really turned on by someone being emotionally vulnerable in those ways. There's been several movies, I can't remember the names of at the moment, that have also depicted this. However, if that's my thing, right? If it's my thing that likes, which it is not, like I like my partners being emotionally vulnerable, but I don't want to see Charlie cry. Like, as much as we can prevent it from needing to happen, I prefer to do that. But if it's going to happen, it's definitely not going to make me horny. However, if that's my thing, it would be really unethical of me to go out and try to intentionally cause emotional distress or something to provoke tears in my partner in order for me to enjoy that. What would need to happen is I would need to confess to my partner or share with my partner, hey, this is a thing that I have realized in myself. Like, it really makes me want to have sex with you. Yeah, why not happy tears? Like, it could be, but a lot of the time, I think it tends to be about like either sadness or like, think about like the Byronic hero in literature, right? A lot of that is about like finding someone's and like half of Edgar Allan Poe's work, but that's more directed towards women, is like finding the person who's like sad all the way into the deepness of their soul, perpetually a little depressed and a little just like cannot, is too fragile for life. Finding that kind of hot, right? There's also like all this time period in certain periods of literature that really, really eroticized like the woman who's young and beautiful who's going to die before her time, dying of consumption. And like, yeah, that's, to me, this is like really parallel to the like, I like it when somebody cries. Okay, so it would not be consensual of me to just like go out and try to make my partner cry. I would need to say, hey, listen, this is what I like. You know, are you down to like occasionally watch movies like, or the dog dies in it, or like, people die and we get sad and then we cry together and then we'll have good sex. I mean, we could try. And that could be a thing, right? But we would need to talk about it. Okay. So here's the stages of jealousy, and it goes identification of the feeling, usually by a bodily sensation, but you might not be aware of the cause. I know for me, jealousy and envy and stuff tends to sit like right in my diaphragm, right below the breastbone. I start to feel this like kind of, not a pit, because it's more like anxiety and like fear, but it's more like I feel like something's kind of moving around like this in there. Not like butterflies in your stomach, but like squirming. And hello, Letty the Teddy. But that's weird. It doesn't show up in Uxilla. Would you mind if I cut onions next to you? I think that's also great, right? Like, it depends on exactly how that desire manifests, but that could be very effective. Anyway, learning to identify when you're feeling it. Realization, when you actually realize that you're experiencing jealousy, and then you can take some closer inspection of it and sort of figure out where is it coming from. And this point is really important. People often feel relief at knowing why they were feeling bad in themselves. And so this is, again, emotions communicate things to us, our brain talking to our mind. And it's really important for us to like listen to that. And that it includes listening with our whole body, because a lot of emotional experiences are physiological as well. Like, I mean, they all are, of course. Everything mental is physical, but like there'll be sensations in many places. This is where things can really go wrong, when you rationalize or cognitively distort. So if I realize I'm feeling jealous of, say, somebody's ability to play the guitar, like I'm at a party and someone's whipping out the guitar and they're playing Wonderwall, and everyone's like clapping and being like happy, and I might feel jealous because I want to be the center of attention. And if that led me to be like, oh, all these people are so stupid, they're impressed by Wonderwall, huh? Everyone can play that. That's so passe. Like, no, that's not a helpful response. A helpful response, something that's supportive of me, would be to look at this feeling and say, okay, where is this coming from? I want the people at this party to also think I'm cool. I want the social esteem here. Do I actually want to go out and learn the guitar? Do I want social esteem through that? And if so, like, okay, I can make a plan for that. But if maybe I don't necessarily want particularly to learn to play guitar and to get social esteem that way, I can allow me to reflect on what are the things I do bring to this party? What are the things that people do like me for? And then I can continue to cultivate and work on those things. Okay. So let's go ahead. Oh, hi, Teacher Brian, and have a good day. Yep, I'll see you on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to it. So the causes of jealousy, we kind of talked through them. And the benefits and jealousy are really also important to talk about. But I'm going to do it quickly because I want to get to some scenarios. So one of them is that they help you identify relationship security issues. If you've got things in your relationship that say make you, with maybe not even realizing it, feel that say you are sexually inadequate, and you catch your partner looking at pornography, and that makes you feel jealous, and you start to do the cognitive distortion of like, this is absolute proof that I'm sexually inadequate. My partner doesn't really like me. We're going to break up. This is going to be the worst. Like, I just can't please them. This is terrible. Like, you go down this big panic rabbit hole. That's not really going to help. But instead, if you can look at it and say, okay, something is making me worried about this. Maybe it's something within me. Maybe it's something my partner has said or a past partner said, or maybe it's something in the dynamic. But I'm going to spend some time investigating it, and then I can figure out, okay, it's because I want this kind of reassurance from my partner or whatever. I can sit down and talk with my partner about it and say, like, hey, I've been feeling like I might not be, sexually adequate in this relationship. And I wanted to talk about how that's making me feel and some things that are heightening that. And I'd also love to get your perspective on things. It doesn't have to be so perfunctory or whatever, but you could talk about it because it's still communicating good information. If I start to become jealous of my partner's new friend, for example, I should investigate. What is the source of this jealousy? Is that I'm afraid that they like the friend more than me? Well, they're married to me and they're not married to their work friend. So probably they don't like their friend more than me. That's how I would think about it. But is it because I'm sad that we don't have that kind of novelty with each other anymore? Okay, well then probably that means I need to be cultivating other aspects of my life outside of this relationship, so we both get a regular dose of novelty in our lives that we can then bring back to each other, right? And that doesn't even have to mean any kind of polyamory or open relationship. It can just mean I'm gonna, start taking music lessons, or I'm gonna start rock climbing, or I'm gonna join, a tennis club. And then that way I get things that enrich my life and I can bring that energy back to my partner. Am I jealous because, I am sad that I can't just go out? We have kids now and I'm home with the kids, and my partner can just go out after work and have a beer with their coworker. And is that what I'm jealous about? If so, I would need to talk to my partner, and maybe we try to get a babysitter once in a while. Even if we can't afford it, maybe we can come up with some sort of plan. Or we can create a little fake bar at home, and we sit in bar stools in the corner and drink a beer together and listen to shitty music played through bad speakers way too loud and put on some sounds of a noisy crowd. And we can if we can't really afford to go out with a babysitter or something, that would allow you to sort of figure out, what is the source of this jealousy? What is this jealousy telling me I need that I don't have? Party Like It's 1999. It's a good song. Oh man, that's a great song. Reverend Mort, you said the stigma of jealousy in romantic relationships is so horrendously destructive. By viewing it as either justified and thus you're in the right, or unjustified and thus you're guilty for feeling it, utterly short circuits what kind of reflection it could possibly prompt. Exactly. And that's one of the things I'm trying to say with this, is that it doesn't even matter if the jealousy is unfounded, especially according to the person that you're feeling jealous in response to, right? Charlie might say, oh, it's ridiculous. Why would you feel jealous of this? But it doesn't matter. It's because I feel jealous of this, and we need to investigate it together so we can figure out what is in a need that is not being met. Or maybe I have to do it on my own mostly, but we need to investigate it on some level so I can figure out what's the need that's not being met. You know, if I walked into my partner watching porn and I feel really jealous, though realistically in my relationship it's more likely to be the other way around. If Charlie felt jealous of me looking at pornography, for example, I would take it seriously. I might say to him, like, hey, this does not in any way diminish anything. It does not, you know, make me, I don't think about these porn stars while we're having sex. I literally don't think about anything except the sex I'm having. You know, like, it's not a thing. I should not just dismiss Charlie's concerns. I would need to say, okay, tell me more. What is it about this that makes you feel jealous? Now, again, remember the ultimatum versus the boundary. If Charlie just came in and said, no, you can never look at this stuff again, I would have to say, like, we need to figure out another way to navigate this because it can't be you restricting me from doing something. You know, now, the thing is it could be a situation where we come to a conclusion. You know, if I tell my partner, oh, thank you for the follow. Is that, move it up. Oh, fragmentary yearning. Okay. Thank you for the follow. It was like over some text on my screen, so I couldn't really see what it said. If I might come to a conclusion, right? Like, let's say, for example, I'm at a party and I make a joke that hurts Charlie's feelings. It's a joke about something Charlie is maybe slightly insecure about, but it gets a good laugh and I'm loving it. If Charlie says to me, hey, please don't ever make that joke again, it really hurts my feelings. Or says to me, hey, you can never make that joke again, I'm unacceptable. That's not exactly the same thing as like some kind of ultimatum control thing. That's Charlie setting a boundary in a way that's just using different words. Anyway, so there's some other effects, positive effects of jealousy and some negative ones. So I'm going to place this in the chat one more time, especially for anyone new who's joined. And we're going to look at some Reddit examples. So I did a little Reddit search just for looking with Am I the Asshole and Jealousy? And there are many, many, many posts. Many, many. Because jealousy is a regular thing that people deal with. And it can lead us to becoming, you know, as they say, the green-eyed monster. It's a powerful emotion. Okay, so let's look at some of these. Am I the asshole for asking my ex-wife to stop making my kids jealous and flaunting? So right off the bat here, I don't know how to respond to this. Am I the asshole for asking my ex-wife to stop making my kids jealous and flaunting? I mean, like, anything to do with your ex-spouse, especially when you have kids together, is like dangerous territory. Because that's a whole mess that a lot of people, you know, don't always get over. Okay, let's find out more. So I've, a 38-year-old man, been divorced from my ex-wife, a 35-year-old woman, for 10 years. And we have 2 kids together. 2 boys, 12 and 10. I remarried a year later while she's still single. Okay, so he's been married for like 9 years. Remarried a year later. And that's a quick turnaround, but okay. Okay. How long were you 2 married? I don't understand. Okay, I don't need to know that. It's just whenever people have that quick of a turnaround, especially from a marriage, it feels a little like, I hope you had enough time to process. Not even just like, I'm worried they were cheating. More just like, I hope you had enough time to process what was going on that led to this first divorce and like process how you feel about getting divorced and process all these other things before you got into another relationship. You don't want to jump out of the frying pan and into the fire, as they say. You don't want to go from one bad situation into an identical bad situation. But I do feel like that happens a lot when people jump from either very long-term relationship to long-term relationship or like a marriage into another marriage really quickly. That's my worry a lot of the time. I think it's really useful. After I got divorced, my first marriage was less than a year, but I took several years of like, I'm not going to date anything more than casual. I'm going to like I'll let people know right from the start. It's only casual. I want to go out and we're going to have a nice time together. We're going to drink some drinks. We're going to eat some food. We're going to listen to some music, whatever. We're going to go on a trip together occasionally, maybe to the beach. But that's it. It's not going to get any more serious than that because I need to figure out how I basically married my stepdad. I did not actually marry my stepdad. I just married someone who was similar in ways that were like, they had none of the nice things about my stepdad and had everything that was stressful about my stepdad. And I was just like, okay, I need to figure out my shit before I try to like seriously have a relationship again. And I did, and it was so important. Like, it set me up to have this rock solid, outstanding marriage that I have now. And whenever people don't get that, I get really concerned for them. That's all I'm trying to say here. And it could mean that they were also like seeing the new person. Okay, I remarried a year later while she's still single. I have 3 further kids, all girls, 9, 7, and 3. I have my sons over every weekend. About 4 years, my ex-wife opened up an online business and she's been making 6 figures. Well, my wife is a stay-at-home mom and I make $30,000 to support her family. So you can imagine how this difference has affected our 2 households. They live in a gated community. She drives a 2022, I don't know what, fancy car. And she and our sons go to 2 extravagant holidays a year. My sons came over this weekend and started telling me and the girls that they're going to Disney on a Disney concierge cruise in the summer. My daughter started crying, saying, "Daddy, we want to go." And when I looked online for the prices, they're priced at $5,000 per person. Aradin, what is EHS? I don't know what that is. American Horror Story? But I don't think so because it's an E. I want to know though. Okay. Everyone here sucks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It did not occur to me. I was like, anyway, emergency holographic system. Yeah, my brain went everywhere but what actually made sense for the subreddit. Okay. It's been all they've been talking about nonstop. I feel like their wealth is being shoved in our throats. We can barely afford heating this Christmas. It's hard not to be hateful, but I sent her a long text saying stop trying to make us feel less than. I also told my sons in private, please don't mention holidays or gifts around the girls. She replied with saying it's not her problem how we feel, and when she does nice things for the boys. Me and my wife are the last people on her mind. Am I reading into this too much, or am I the asshole? Okay, so I wouldn't actually agree with you, Rodden, totally that this isn't everyone here sucks, because the ex-wife is 10,000 million% allowed to move on with her life and do whatever the fuck she wants. She's not beholden to her ex-husband or her ex-husband's feelings. Bye, Uxilla. Thanks for joining. This is not a situation where she's not beholden to that. There are things that she could do that are nice, but she is no way required to them. And in this case, I don't really think she's required to do anything. Her having 2 sons who are her only kids, and she's not married, and she's not likely going to have any more kids in the near future unless she gets remarried, and being successful financially and wanting to treat her kids to something is completely within her rights. It's also within her son's rights to be excited about it. Now, where I think things could be useful is she's not flaunting. As far as we know, nothing in this here makes me think there's any flaunting happening. She's simply spending money that she has and doing nice things with her kids. And what is she supposed to do? Like, also not heat her house and also, like, yeah. I mean, not exactly the nicest response. Sure. However, like, ex-spouses, generally speaking, it's pretty common for them to hate each other and not be very nice to each other. Yeah. So the thing is it isn't her problem how they feel though. And she's allowed to do nice things for her boys. We don't know how she wrote it as well. We don't have any information on that. We just have this mainline, this summary here. She may have written it much more nicely, and this person is adding, extra, rudeness or matter of factness. But the fact still remains, it isn't her problem how they feel. And she cannot stop her kids from being excited about something. What they could do here is this would be a good chance for the person who made this post to have a frank conversation with his daughters about class and about social differences and about how it has nothing to do with how hard you work or being a good person or a bad person. It is just the way society is structured, and teach them about these things. It's also a way to teach them about recognizing that life isn't fair. People get really stuck on the idea that things are supposed to be fair, and that causes a lot of pain and suffering. But fundamentally, life is not fair. And teaching them, hey, you're not going to get all the same things your brothers get because they have another mother who's got more money than we do. And I say this as someone who grew up with parents who got divorced when I was very young, who we were very poor at certain points in time. And then when I was very young, we were incredibly poor, like similarly can't afford to heat the house in winter, like all the clothing is coming from Goodwill or the secondhand shop, and we're eating, soup 7 days a week kind of thing, like pretty poor. And then at one point it shifted, and my dad was doing much better financially than my mom, even though my mom was paying child support, because my dad was the person who had main custody. And now my parents are both doing pretty well. So I saw this sort of ebb and flow. And there was an issue like when my parents first were divorced, my mom moved in with a friend who later became my stepfather. And every time we went there, we'd get a bunch of gifts. And my dad's perspective on that was that they were trying to buy our affection. Whereas my mom's perspective on it was, you don't have any things here. You need to have toys, you need to have clothes, you need to have things because I can't just take all the stuff from your house and we don't have enough really to split up. So I need to get you stuff. And sometimes my parents would talk to me and my brother about it like too much and like kind of put us in the middle, which usually happens in divorce, and it's shit and I hate it, but it's a thing that's just kind of on some levels inevitable unless people are very, very like amicable and careful and like can communicate with each other, which was not my parents. But on the other hand, my dad and mom did both need to explain to us financial differences and financial limitations. Some of these things did not go very well. There were like rules my parents tried to put in place for different things that I look back and I'm like, that's literally ridiculous. Like I remember being like 12 or 13 and like getting some training bras. My mom took me out to get them. I did not want to go buy those with my dad under any circumstances. I was like, absolutely not. But my mom, because she didn't have very much money and she knew if I took them to my dad's house, they would never come back, told me I was only allowed to wear them at her place and I couldn't take them to school with me and stuff, which was really devastating to me because I felt really insecure. I really wanted to like have this covering. People were like, there was so much attention being paid to like girls' bodies at this time, especially like breast development. It was so stressful. And also like under no circumstances did I want to go buy this stuff with my dad. What I would have loved would have been to be my mom takes me out, buys me enough, sends my dad the receipts, and they split the cost. I don't know why that didn't happen. I'm sure there was good reason, mostly because my parents didn't talk to each other very well. But these were conversations that happened. And mine were like not great, right? They weren't even like as easy as this of like, well, you know what, your brother's mom has a ton of money and we don't, and we can make do with other things. We can have nice experiences in other ways, and let's focus on the stuff we can have rather than stuff we can't have. Teaching them to be resilient in other ways. Teaching them to understand that you don't always get what you want. Now I'm going to start thinking of that Rolling Stones song. But anyway, you can't always get what you want. But yeah, Paladin Hulk, exactly. Kids, we're poor. We can't afford hopes and dreams, let alone Disney cruises. And Aradin, you said, yeah, that is always the issue with these. It's that the perception and how it can be shifted or warped. Yeah, with the rewriting. So, deceptive mirror. The dude makes 30K a year. A spouse doesn't earn money, and they have 3 kids. It's also a bit irresponsible. I mean, that's my immediate assumption, but there's probably a million extenuating circumstances, like making so little money, shifting to the mother or wife working would be really difficult because they would need someone to take care of the kids, especially the 3-year-old. And, that if you don't have a good cushion of savings, that can be like a permanent barrier. But then the other thing is that, there are a million reasons why this could be. Could be that he's just like, lazy ass, but it also could be that, he might have health conditions or disabilities that make it harder for him to work different types of jobs, or he might not have qualifications. Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right, deceptive mirror. It is a stay-at-home spouse is a very incredibly important job and difficult work, and generally saves people a ton of money every year for all the things that you can do, like cooking and cleaning and chauffeuring your kids around and all of that stuff. It's estimated to be like over $100,000 a year in value. However, what's the jealousy here? Sort of coming back to that. I would say that, like, the kids being jealous is normal, and the kids wanting the same things that their half siblings are getting is normal. And the dad just needs to have a conversation with the kids about why it's not possible. They're not, so little that they can't get some age appropriate. 9 and 7 is still pretty young, but that's a good age to start talking about these sorts of things. So most of the people said this person was the asshole. Especially saying, like, of course you're the last people on her mind. She's just trying to live her life. Yeah. And I would say this also, if he's living on 30K with 2 kids alone, he would be owed massive child support. How do they even have a home on a 30K salary? Yeah. This is a stressful situation. Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, it depends on the state how child support works, which is true. So this one I feel like is kind of a simpler one because it's jealousy that makes absolute sense. The kids want something that they don't have, that they see their siblings getting. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. All right, so then let's go on to another one. I think your point's good, Aradin, that they could have been new wife's kids as well. Aradin, the more I think about it, the more I get the sense that this come across, please make my job easier since you make more money, and so I assume your life is easy. Yeah, to a certain extent. And, like, there are some things that could maybe go a long way if the ex-wife were incredibly generous. She could get games or toys or something that all the kids could share or whatever. But, if he's not nice to her and it's stressful, or she doesn't really have that much disposable income all the time or whatever, who knows? Like, and you don't know how she afforded to pay for that cruise. It could be partially subsidized by her, company or some other deal she got or some timeshare. Like, those things happen. Okay. Another one here. Am I the asshole for being jealous that my close friend is hanging out with friends? So this is, again, you're not an asshole for just feeling these feelings. I just want to make that clear. It's about how you respond to having these feelings. If someone's shitting on you for having a feeling at all, that's not nice. But it's if you're doing something that's not great in response to having those feelings, that's also the problem. Okay, so we all play a game on most nights together, but recently my close friend has been playing alone with one of the other friends in the group. Usually during the time period, I'd usually be playing with them as a group. I try not to feel any emotion. I really do. This is always my immediate assumption when reading this is that this person is very young, probably high school age. But also this idea of like, I try not to feel any emotions, literally impossible. You're not a machine. Emotions are literally how your brain communicates with your mind. That's it. You can get real good at squashing those emotions down, but and like dissociating from those emotions. That's my main sort of response to the whole like philosophy of stoicism is like you can get really good. Like there's a couple of pathways. Like you could get really good at being so aware of yourself and using so much metacognition and being like so good at just sort of taking things in stride and very quickly processing and integrating things that it almost feels like you don't have that many emotions. You could learn to become very detached from life in a way, or you get really good at just suppressing everything. But it's not actually possible to rid oneself of emotions unless you literally have a brain surgery that like cuts you off from the emotional processing centers of your brain. But those parts still feel the emotions. You just don't have any awareness of it. Reverend Mort, you said, oh, Ron, you agreed it was a big red flag. Yeah. Reverend Mort, oh, sorry, I got to paste this in the chat if you all want it. I try not to feel any emotion. I really do identify the root of the problem. Toxic mindset to your own mind is really going to poison that well, the well that is you. Absolutely. If you hate on yourself for having feelings, that's going to be hard. You might not like a feeling that you're having. You might not like the way you react to certain things. I might not like that certain people get me so riled up that I like can't speak as clearly as I would like to, and I get flustered and I like lose my cool around them. This can happen, right, to anybody. But if I get mad at myself for having emotional reactions to things and try to shut down my emotions, I'm not going to get the outcome I'm looking for. What I need to learn is figure out is like, why do I have these responses to this person? Using my self-knowledge, can I use metacognition and think about my future self to create a better scenario for handling things better the next time I'm around this person? Reverend Mort, you said, I do believe historically you can also have some success by having a railroad spike rocket through your skull and surviving this experience. Apparently quite an emotionally transformative experience. Yeah. I mean, removing those parts of your brain will have that effect. Okay. So let's continue with this situation. But I overthink a lot and has led me to think that which is just because of an emotion, that I'm either not good enough at the game, they don't want to play with me, or they're just tired of me. Yeah, I also understand the reference, and it's fascinating that people actually could survive that. Okay. It has led me to send some texts like, I guess I'm not good enough at the game for y'all. Don't do this in general. Even if you're feeling this way, even if you, why does someone send this kind of text? Someone sends this kind of text because they're feeling pain and they want other people to see that pain and either come soothe it for them, come rescue them from the pain, or prove to them that their pain is 100% justified. Generally speaking, that's why someone does this kind of thing. And you're not going to get the results you're looking for generally, or you might in the short term with an individual, but eventually people get tired of this. So what do you do in this situation here? You got to actually tell people what you actually want to tell them, which is, hey, I'm feeling let down because I was hoping we could play this game a lot more than we have. Can we talk about it? Or like, hey, I'm going to get busy with school in the near future and I'm not going to be able to hang out as much. Can we prioritize hanging out together for the next couple of weekends or whatever? Whatever. There's a lot of things you can do, say, but this is passive aggressive. It's emotionally manipulative, and it's not going to get you what you're looking for, and not in any sort of sustainable way. It might in the short term, but people get tired of that shit real fast. Reverend Mort. Oh, Arada, you said this used to be me, which is why this just really annoys me and angers me. Yeah, I mean, we do tend to feel annoyance and anger when people reflect things we don't like about ourselves. I have learned instead to really channel into love. So when I meet like really mansplainy dudes, I'm just like, I feel kinship with you because I am also an info dumper with not necessarily great situational awareness of when it is or isn't appropriate. I get it. And rather than like cringing at it, because I'm just like, you know what? I get it. I get it. And sometimes they have like totally different reasons for being that way. And like some of them have actually been just like kind of asshole people, but a lot of them are just similarly like neurodivergent. So yeah, instead of I used to hate myself for that. And then I just was like, you know what? The perfect venue for this is Twitch. I just get to do it for an audience. Okay. Anyway, continuing. Other things this person has said is, I'm not going to have enough time to play soon. Are you free tomorrow to play? And a bit that can seem passive aggressive. Since then, my close friend has called me selfish for being jealous that she's spending time with a friend alone. I've expressed what I felt and overthought to the close friend recently, but she has told me she has the right to hang out with who she wants at what time and called me extremely selfish again. So the point here is the close friend does have the right to hang out with whomever they want to, whenever they want to. And also, it is true that relationships atrophy when you stop putting in effort to them. And if you've realized you've stopped putting effort into a relationship, it's good to like take a step back and say, am I putting less effort into this because I no longer want to be invested in this relationship and I haven't admitted it to this other person, or I haven't admitted it to myself and I haven't really realized it yet? Or do I not actually want this relationship to atrophy, but I also want to develop this new friendship? How can I navigate these two things at the same time? Perfectly plausible. If this person who made this post is feeling such intense rejection and stress from their best friend having another friend, there's probably a lot of insecurity this person has to work on. Remember in this one here, the sort of like sources of jealousy can be things like low self-esteem. I would say that's probably what this person is doing. People also tend to be pretty passive aggressive when they have a lot of low self-esteem. It's pretty common. Let me see here. What are you all saying? Deceptive Mirror, this particular post made me feel a little ashamed because I definitely remember being like this and it wasn't as in the distant past as I'd like. Yeah, I mean, this is something also. I remember years ago, I was in college. I had a friend of mine who was a pretty good friend through my college job, and he had gotten into a fight with another friend, someone I didn't really know, and he was giving her the silent treatment. And he said to me, like, I'm still waiting for her to come and apologize. And the situation was something where it's like, yeah, that's definitely something she should apologize for. But like, also, if I were her, I might not know that you were even upset about it or had even noticed that this thing had happened or whatever. And he went months without talking to her before he told me about this because he was like, I'm still waiting for her to come apologize. Like, I'm so pissed off that she hasn't done that yet. And I was like, that's expecting her to mind read. One, to know that because I think it was like she made some joke that maybe was a little like harsh, that went a little too far. And he was really hurt by it. And she hadn't said anything. But the thing is like, one, she might not realize that it hurt you. Two, she might not realize that you're waiting for an apology or that she should apologize. She might think that you've just moved on from it. And people don't always want to bring up stuff from the past. People can feel really anxious about preemptively apologizing for something, lest you weren't upset about it and now you are, though it's usually still a good idea to apologize. It's just preemptively. I'm going to just recommend that if you feel like you've done something transgressive, it can still be nice to apologize for it. But like just expecting her to just know, to intuit this. And what I said to him is like, do you actually want to be friends with this person or not? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, then don't play games with this friendship. Like right now, you're playing a game that she doesn't even know she's playing. And if you keep on that path, you're just going to lose this friend, most likely. And when I told him that, he was like, oh shit, you're right. And he went and he messaged her and he said like, hey, I haven't been talking to you because I was really hurt about this thing that happened last time. Can we talk about it? And she was exactly as I said, had no idea, had just been super busy with university and figured that he was too. And then they like made up and things got a lot better. Anyway, okay. But this is something that like not everybody gets the opportunity to learn, really. And most people don't, it doesn't just take like one conversation for them to like be like, oh, I get it now and I'm gonna just be great at friendship forever. Okay, Aradin, I'm assuming that this poster is male. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, and the fact that the friend in question is female, I wonder if that also affects the situation. Potentially, yeah. Reverend Mort replying to Deceptive Mirror, rejoice that you have changed rather than rather that you didn't do so sooner. I love that perspective. And what does this highlight feature do? Highlight. Can I just... No, I wanted to highlight what you wrote, but I highlight something different. Okay, never mind. Aradin, yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, it is nice to see how much I've changed since then. And then Aradin, you also said, yeah, passive aggressiveness is kind of like pouring acid on those bonds of friendship. I can still sadly have tendencies towards passive aggressiveness, although I am getting much better at mitigating that. And then you also said apologizing is a sign of strength, not of weakness. 100%. So going back to this, it's not selfish of you necessarily to want to see your friend and to not want things to really change, but to try to emotionally blackmail your friend into nothing changing is not great. And it's not going to get you what you're looking for. Okay. I really do understand how I'm being selfish, but a part of me wishes how I overthink this so much to the point I'm being overwhelmed with emotions. I really try to feel, yeah, at least they're admitting that they feel emotions at this point. She now continues to play alone with this friend more and has new friends to play this game with because she was tired of being treated like shit for spending time with friends. I mean, that makes sense. Again, this is probably what the result is. People tolerate this until they don't. And she told me this directly, which has led to a few nights of no gaming with this group. Am I being a selfish asshole? You're being young. I'm just really going to assume that maybe even this person is like 13. But the first person said, you're the asshole. It's natural to feel jealous in a situation like this, but guilt tripping your friend is not the way to go. At most, you could have lightly mentioned that you're available to game whenever and left it at that. So this is can be, though, passive. Like, not passive, but this can be, like, still not very effective. And instead, what I would recommend saying to your friend is like, hey, I'm available to game wherever. And, I'm really glad that you've made this new friend and you're connecting with them. And I'd also still like to work to keep our friendship good. Can we talk about strategies? Or, like, you don't even need to say that. Just say, like, hey, and also, like, I want to stay really invested in our friendship with each other, even while you're exploring a new friendship with somebody else. And I'm really glad that you have this opportunity. The problem is, though, you wouldn't get into this situation if you had those skills, most likely. Yeah, exactly, Rod. And the feelings here aren't the problem. It is the response to the feelings that is the problem. It likely wasn't a personal affront towards you. Maybe there are subjects they only feel comfortable discussing with that particular friend, or maybe they just wanted a more low-key hangout session without being part of a larger group. Either way, it is not your place to keep tabs, and if you want to keep these friends, you need to cut out the guilt tripping immediately. Exactly. And this other point is important. You are responsible for your own emotions. You can ask for help with processing them. You can ask for people to respond to the source of certain aspects of emotions. However, you're fundamentally the person who has to deal with your feelings, and putting them on other people is not going to be successful. Okay, Deceptive Mirror, you said that one response that says you are responsible for your own emotions has helped me so much over the years. It has made me so much easier for my emotional state. Yeah. And I think that that's really a good, thank you for sharing that, a common thing with people who really understand what this means and take it to heart. Because if I start to think other people are responsible for my emotions, I'm going to then hype myself up into a state where I can't resolve these feelings unless other people do something, right? Like if I'm feeling upset and I'm putting it on somebody else, that means I'm going to not be able to stop feeling upset on some level unless this other person does whatever thing I think it will take. You know, they apologize, or they, you know, give me a bunch of money, or they like grovel on the ground at my feet begging for forgiveness, you know, whatever. If I don't say, okay, these are my feelings and I need to deal with them, and then I can ask somebody for an apology. If I don't do that, it's going to be a lot harder to move forward. Okay, so Deceptive Mirror, yeah, I totally agree. You said, I mean, I still welcome my enemies groveling, but yes, they're my feelings. Aradan, you said, I wonder if it is stuff like this which the poster then blames the emotions for the problems, which was why they try to have the statement early about I try not to have emotions, I really do. As that they think the problem is having emotions rather than the reactions to the emotions. I think you're 100% correct. I think that this is one of those things that is likely to happen. The person is likely to think the problem is that I had these feelings, not the problem is how I dealt with these feelings. Because this feeling is important here. This feeling is communicating, sorry, I didn't mean to highlight that, to this person that this relationship is important to them and they feel like it is under threat and action needs to be taken. It's not the feeling that is the problem at all. Reverend Mort, you said we tend to have this tendency to view emotions as something that provokes actions outside of our control. Right, which then makes emotions scary. Rather than something that motivates actions, which we are ultimately both in control of and responsible for. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, this person really needs to just be okay with their feelings. So I only want to spend time on one more, but I'm going to share for you all the others that I opened. So this one was, am I the asshole for telling my friend the lengths she is going to interfere with my marriage is unhealthy? I think this is really interesting. The next one is, am I the asshole for asking my girlfriend and her sister to cover up? I mean, I feel like this is already a pretty easy answer, but these are some newer ones. This one got locked, I'm pretty sure. But maybe it hasn't yet. But yeah, just like trying to control other people's bodily autonomy. Deceptive Mirror, low stakes post, but I got jealous of so many awesome people around me knitting. So I learned how to knit and now I can knit and love my hobby. See, that's, I think, a great way to share that. You know, like, yeah, I think that's really, it just shows you what you want. And I think usually jealousy is really useful in that way. And then, am I the asshole for taking all the collars off my son's shirts? This one's also pretty straightforward. Son has autism and has sensory issues with collars. Relative mother-in-law got furious because she took the collars off of some of these fancy ass shirts. Whatever. Like, you don't have to apologize for your son's autism. The mother-in-law should know this and Do you want the kid to wear the shirts or not? Whatever. But here's the one I actually want to talk about, and I'm going to post it in the chat as well because I really like it because it's got a bunch of good commentary. This is the thing that blew up a lot on Twitter. So let's go ahead and read it first. This is very bright. I'm going to turn my screen down a little. Okay, that's better. All right. Am I the asshole for telling my friend that I have a crush on her boyfriend? So my good friend and I are usually very close. We were both in our late 20s, but now we've known each other since high school. Late 20s now, but we've known each other since high school, sorry. In all those years, our friendship has never been that rocky until recently. My friend and her boyfriend met about 6 months ago. I'm currently in grad school and have chosen to remain single. But before they met, my friend and I would hang out at her place when I was done with classes because she lives close by. But about 4 months ago, the dynamic started to shift to a trio when her boyfriend started to consistently hang out with us. My friend had showed me pictures of him, and I always thought he was attractive, but the crush started to develop when I met him in person. I won't go into too much detail, but my friend's boyfriend, who I would consider to be a friend now, is honestly so fun to be around, and I always look forward to hanging out with him after class. Aside from looks, and he's probably the most beautiful man I've ever seen in person, he's really knowledgeable and a great conversationalist. He's a good storyteller and has a good sense of humor. He's super kind and always checks in with me and seems to know the right words to say to make me feel appreciated. It sounds tropey, but honestly, I can't detect anything wrong with him, which is even more infuriating for me because I actually don't want to have this crush or think about him in a romantic way. Last week, he went to visit family, so hasn't been around. Last Friday, my friend wanted to know what I thought about him because they were thinking of moving in together. I basically gave her a rundown of similar to the last paragraph, and this prompted her to say that it sounded like I had a crush on him. She said it in a joking way, so I sort of just laughed it off. But then I just sort of blurted out that I honestly think I do have a crush on him. It got super awkward when I said that, and I immediately felt like I screwed up. So, like, generally speaking, yeah, I would say this is kind of a thing to screw up. Like, it's not very tactful. Like, there's social graces, right? Like, it's, if people are monogamous, especially, it's pretty understood that if you find somebody's partner attractive, you just kind of keep it to yourself. The person who was here earlier talking about hell would probably appreciate, like, you know, it's literally in the 10 Commandments not to covet your friend or neighbor's partner. I mean, it literally only says wife, I think, but setting that aside, it's because it's a shit move, right? Like, that's a rule that, like, makes sense. Also, it occurred to me the other day that the 10 Commandments is, like, one of the oldest code of conduct, right? Like the Code of Hammurabi and the 42 Precepts of Mott. These are all just old codes of conduct. I love it. So yeah, it's generally, like, social grace-wise, dodgy to let someone know that you think that their partner is, like, super attractive or that you have a crush on them or you'd love to sleep with them. It's just awkward. What are they supposed to do with that information? Yes. But that being said, it's also normal. If you're close with somebody, it's not that uncommon to be attracted to people they're attracted to. Anyway, I mean, like, Charlie and I have the same taste in women a lot of the time. But I'm usually the one who's pointing them out. Okay. But then I just sort of blurted out that I honestly think I do have a crush on him. I got super awkward when I said that, and I immediately felt like I screwed up. I tried to downplay it by saying that it was probably just hormones and me being single, and basically tried to play it off as a joke. Fast forward to Monday when her boyfriend came home. My friend sent me this text. It's verbatim. This is nice. I like when we get verbatim things. Hey, my name. Going forward, I think I need to set some boundaries because I don't want his name to become an issue with us. I think from now on, we could just hang out on the weekends, just the two of us, if that's okay. It would make me feel a lot better. Call me and we can talk about this more. Lots of love. Or love you lots. So this is the thing I would say so far, is that, like, this isn't exactly setting a boundary. However, it's also, this person still seems invested in this friendship, right? And if we go back here, we can see that they're in their late 20s, but they've known each other since high school. So it's at least 10 years, if not longer. And probably that friendship should be the main priority in this situation, maintaining this friendship over all the other things. Okay, continuing. My usual routine on Monday was going to hang out with her after my lecture, so I felt kind of surprised by this. I have not reached out to her since her text. I'm a bit angry with her because I feel like she's implying that she can't trust me around him. And now she's depriving me of a genuine friendship that has grown between me and him. But I also want to know if this is something that is entirely my fault. So people of Reddit, am I the asshole here? So this is one of those things where, like, she could continue to develop a friendship with this guy, but which friendship does she want to prioritize? Because that would hurt her friend, right? Okay. And however, I think this person wrote, my unpopular opinion is I think you can actually control crushes for the most part. I think there's a difference between identifying that you're attracted to someone physically, emotionally, and actively entertaining those feelings and fantasizing about them. And I would say that this is true. I'm very much a slightly different person. If I had a friend who told me that they had gotten a crush on Charlie, I would just be like, of course you did, because he's amazing. Like, if I see somebody talking to Charlie and I could tell they're attracted to him, someone's making eyes at him, I'm just like, yep, I know, I'm lucky. I got an amazing person. It doesn't provoke a feeling of jealousy or insecurity in me. It just makes me be like, I know what I got and I'm happy. And I like people appreciating Charlie, right? Because I'm just like, yes, he is wonderful and the world should know. But maybe I'm insane. Who knows? All right, what are you all saying in the chat? Okay, Whistler, you said, if people respond to other issues with the way they respond to feelings, the check engine light on my car kept coming on, so I fixed the problem by covering it up with a piece of tape. I love that. That is good. Reverend Mort, am I the asshole for tailoring gifted clothes to fit my needs? Is a rephrase that really highlights it all. I agree. And as a technician, trust me, people do. Wow. One, I didn't know you were a technician, but also I'm not surprised that people just cover things up with tape. I've never done that, but I definitely, when I had a car, would avoid thinking about taking care of it because it was stressful, which made it more stressful. Reverend Mort, the good old-fashioned fantasizing is cheating. Also cheating, dreaming you have sex with someone else. Thy spirit be filthy. Yeah, anytime I've dreamt about having sex with someone else, I'm incapable of not just immediately telling Charlie and just being like, that's so weird, and talking about it. Because it's incredibly rare, and usually it's a hilarious thing. But I don't know. I'm pathologically open or something. I don't know what it is. But yeah, it's, I had a friend once who was joking that she dreamt that her partner cheated on her and she woke up genuinely angry at him. But she said the joke so many times that I was like, whoa, maybe this isn't actually a joke. And maybe she was actually angry at her partner. To me, which I'm just like, that's so wild because dreams are not your subconscious, picking up on mysterious signals in the world around you or things you think could actually happen. Dreams are, as far as we understand, basically defragging a computer, but your brain. You're just reorganizing data into a more hopefully efficient way and cutting some things out that you don't need anymore and strengthening certain pathways. And the dream that is produced is just a random, amalgamation of those that cleaning your brain is doing. Anyway, okay. Paladin Hulk and the guy from the previous Reddit post needs to learn not to covet your neighbor's. She chooses, not to cover. Yeah, she chooses what to wear. I love it. Deceptive Mirror. I have an older woman friend, i.e. old enough to be my mom, and I tell her her husband is attractive. This guy is also old enough to be my dad, so it's very, very harmless. Nice. Aradin, if you were that close with your friend, you should have a decent idea of how they would react to something like this. Maybe, or you might have never been in a situation like this before. But also, I do think this person just said it without thinking. I think it just like came out. The whole not communicating with your friend is the biggest issue I see. And I do 100% agree with that. Reverend Moore, I say this with affection and positivity. Ariana, you are not the average. The average is a lot more possessive. Yeah. Yeah, I really was like rudely reminded of that when my dad was like, so this tattoo you're going to get dedicated to your dead friend. How does Charlie feel about that? And I was like, what? And I was like, right. People do think like that, huh? Also, I just got some heartburn, so I'm going to take a little antacid. Okay. And Rodney said, no, I think we all appreciate Charlie here. Yeah. Reverend Moore, point to make, you were previously in a poly relationship that alone really suggests you have a framework to handle jealousy and envy in an entirely different way than the average monogamous person. 100%. Like, I realize that polyamory doesn't work for me because I would just make a shitty partner. I'm just not capable of sustaining the level of attention and effort and dedication that I want to in a relationship, really with more than one person at a time, other than it may be like really short bursts. And a lot of it's because of my ADHD. It's literally like what exists, what's in front of me is all that exists. I have a poor sense of time. I'm just bad at it. I tried. I was like this. I'm just like disappointing a bunch of people simultaneously rather than effectively doing this. But I've also seen a lot of people who are poly who basically just do that. They just like, I don't know. I try to take it really seriously because I take everything really seriously. Even when I'm choosing not to take something seriously, I take the not taking it seriously. Anyway, however, setting that aside, I'm so thankful for everything I learned from all of my experiences of both things like casual dating to polyamory to like whatever relationships I was in. I just learned a lot and it's helped me be better at other relationships. Yeah. And Aradini said, oh, I know I have some very, very strange and odd and weird dreams, but I almost never remember what they were, just that they were very weird. Yeah, I need to take a comically large bottle of water, but yeah, I get heartburn kind of regularly, but some days are better than others. Deceptive Mirror, I respect poly peeps, the ability to have that many functional relationships. I can't even imagine one. Respect, yeah. And Reverend Moore, I find I'm equally horrible no matter the amount of relationships I have, so I figured why not disappoint as many people as possible at the same time. Go for big numbers for bragging rights. And Aradin, you take not taking it seriously very seriously. I do. The things I choose to be irreverent about usually is because I thought about it seriously. And then like I go wholeheartedly into I will bring irreverence to this. Anyway, setting that aside. For me, the sort of thing I've worked on instead is kind of cultivating more what you would call romantic friendships, which is people where I'm like, I'm friend in love with them. It's not in love with them the way I'm in love with Charlie. I don't want to be a life partner with them. I don't want to like build my life with this person in that way. But like, I get that kind of like crush feeling around them. And like, it's not always sexual attraction or romantic attraction. It's not either. It's its own thing. But it's very like in between other types of love and companionship. And that is what I found works for me because I really prioritize my partner more than other relationships, but then I love my friends a lot. Okay. And I want to just come back to this as like, I think you can control crushes. You don't just trip and fall and someone's dick's in you, right? Like, that's just not what happens. You don't just like somehow find your tongue down someone's throat, right? Like, that's just not a thing. People are choosing to engage in those things. Even in those moments where you're like almost about to kiss, you can just like back away. I have done that. There have been times where like I'm almost about to kiss somebody in my past, and I'm just like, you know what? I know this is a bad idea, and I don't want the mess that's gonna bring. So I've just been like, you know what? I'm sorry, never mind. Reverend Mort, but point out less serious, but about less serious relationships. Few people would judge you for having casual, shallow friendships that are limited. Mentally, I just find myself thinking of romantic and sexual relationships the same. Yeah. And I do have less serious. I guess serious there only means to me the intensity to which I prioritize and invest in any amount of energy at any given time. But like even some of my casual and more superficial friends, if they called me up and said they needed me, I'd be there for them. I wouldn't necessarily fly across the world to be there for them, but I would be there for them. But I would fly across the world to be there for Charlie, for example. And yeah, at one point I was giving myself heartburn pretty much daily due to anxiety, so that was rough. Yeah, for me, it's just like I think my leggings are just too tight on my stomach, and I ate dinner too close before this, and so just too much pressure. But it's rough. Heartburn is not fun. I hope, Rodden, your heartburn is getting better. Reverend Mort, you don't just find yourself with your tongue in someone's throat. You don't know my life, nor my comedically poor coordination and dangerously twisted luck. And I refuse to be judged for my love of relay racing at the nudist camp while on boner bells. I love it. I love it. I love it. I did spend my birthday morning yesterday. Yeah, yesterday was my birthday. Did I tell you all that? I think I forgot. In the morning, I went to a communist spa. I say it's communist spa because it's like a spa, but that's like owned by everybody who goes there. And I spent like 4 hours just naked with all my friends, eating cake and sitting in the sauna and swimming. And it was truly lovely, and like getting like hot stone treatments and stuff. And that was great because it was basically just us because we went there really early. And that was good for my like COVID risk safety anxieties. And there was like a sauna that was ridiculously warm. And then there was like a hot room with like stone wall that you could like lean against that was really warm. And there was like a massage pool. And then there was all these other things. Yeah, we didn't actually eat the cake in the sauna. We just ate it in the general. Also, this place was like super retro. It was built in like some time where between the 60s and the 80s. And exactly, Reverend Moore. Naked, warm, eating cake and massages. It was exactly how I spent my birthday. But I enjoy, for me personally, I get a lot of pleasure and fulfillment of being naked with my friends in a non-sexual manner. I feel like it's very good for my mental health because it's really easy to get in our heads about what we think our body should or shouldn't look like, or just there's so much we can do to ourselves. And then when I'm just like naked in front of my friends and we're all just chill, and I'm just like, you know what? It's great. It's great. And I feel less self-conscious when I'm naked than when I'm wearing a bathing suit. I don't know why. I'd rather just be naked, especially if everybody else is naked. I love Europe. It's so good. Yeah, your only thought was that you don't like moist damn cake, Rodden? Yeah, well, I didn't eat it in the sauna. We were in this little other side area. And yeah, Rodden, feeling you need to apologize for anyone else having to see you naked is, I think, a very common feeling. And once you're in that kind of space, there's so much diversity of bodies that you feel it's like going to a nudist camp. I don't know if you've ever been to one, but I have. I spent a couple weekends at nudist retreats when I was a university student, and it was very good for me. I was like, wow, this is, because you go there and you're like so nervous and you're like, oh, I'm not sure how naked I'm going to get. And then within like 10 minutes, you're just like, I look weird because I have my clothes on. And like you carry around a towel and stuff because you only want to sit on the towel because you don't want to be like hygienic, but I recommend it. It's looking good. Okay, going back to the story. I think that there is a lot here, and I think that there is a lot of the discourse on Twitter was fascinating. Um, exactly, Reverend Morton. Nudism retreat and the like really desexualizes nudity fast AF. 100%. And that's one of the things that I think is really useful is because so many people only ever see their own body and then sexualized bodies. And sexualized bodies that have been photo edited or video edited or digitally retouched or have had surgeries to look that way, or like literally it's their full-time job to condition their bodies to look that way. And we can really get a very, very distorted understanding of how we are, quote, supposed to look. Yeah, you're right, Aradin. A bathing suit can focus and direct attention to the areas that are covered, so that makes sense. I agree. Um, so this scenario here caused a big rift on the internet. And I wish Ash were here. Unfortunately, we had several things scheduled, and so Ash is busy with other things. But this scenario caused some people, some of the like super, super poly people in response to this were trying to say, like, this is basically abuse. It is not. It is not. This person just saying basically, hey, it makes me feel kind of uncomfortable what you said about my boyfriend, but I still want to prioritize this friendship. So I would feel most comfortable if we just hang out, just you and I, and like not with my boyfriend there, and we can talk about it. Because there's, especially because the person is like, we can talk about it and like work through this, they may come to some other agreement. But other people just being like, this is basically cheating and like your friend is terrible, that's also not good. Because it's not. It's just a person has a crush. Your partner is cool, apparently, in the eyes of multiple people, which should make you happy. And it also makes sense. You know, if someone every time they came over to my house was like trying to sit in Charlie's lap, Charlie would not like tolerate that, but let's just say like they were being inappropriate around Charlie, I would probably not want them around Charlie. If someone were being inappropriate around me, I wouldn't want them around me. You know, if Charlie had a coworker that clearly had the hots for me and kind of like leered at me all the time and like was weird around me, I would be like, Charlie, I don't want to be invited to things where this person's going to be there. And let's just not do that. Okay, so I think that the discourse around this has been really fascinating. So let's just read a couple of responses. This one person said, I think the problem is her telling her friend she's a crush instead of actively checking herself on the crush and making sure it didn't grow. And I think her friend is realizing how much they've become a threesome and is like, okay, let's get back to us. And I think this is pretty good. And another person said, I don't know if you can control fantasy. Saying this as someone who cannot for the life of me stop dreaming about this guy who is horrible to me. But I feel like she should have drawn a boundary for herself and tried to kill those feelings instead of entertaining them. So the thing is, I do think that on some levels, it is better consent practices that she told her friend. Because then her friend can have more informed consent about the way she schedules her life. Reverend Morty said, there's literally an invitation to communicate. And yeah, both of those reactions are just insanely overwrought. You're attracted to someone's boyfriend, you harlot, and you're saying you don't want to hang out with someone who's going to sit and thirst at your boyfriend, you selfish monster. Are both insane. I 100% agree. I 100% agree. Now, the thing is, like, if the boyfriend says, no, I'm really wanting to still develop this friendship with her, I want to still hang out with her, because the boyfriend's probably going to ask, like, why are we not hanging out with her on Mondays anymore? Where'd she go? Why is this not a thing anymore? And I would be really curious as to what she said. Now, this is the other thing. If this crush is actually a threat, if the boyfriend, a threat to what? Let's first define that. Losing the boyfriend. And by extension, losing the friendship as well. If this is actually a threat, the woman in question here needs to find a better boyfriend and a better friend. The friend, 100%, it is generally speaking very much a bad idea to try to date your friends' partners or your friends' exes. In my friend group in college, there was this one guy who I did date who had a bad tendency of swooping in when a relationship one of his friends was having was on the rocks and being the shoulder to cry on, which is exactly what he did to me before I realized what his game was. And then like getting you to date him by showing you how much better he is than the person who's making you so sad. And I very much like broke up with this person well before I dated this other guy. I was just like, no, I need a little space in between my relationships. But it was not as much space as I normally take because I was being so pursued. And I later came to find out like he literally did this constantly to all of his friends. If one of his friends was dating a girl and the relationship started to get sour, he would just swoop in and try to do this. And that basically made it so everyone kind of thought he was an asshole for a long time. And when confronted about it, he was like, well, you all basically pre-vetted these girls, so I know that they're good. And which is just like such genuinely a fucked up thing to say. It was a genuinely fucked up situation. I'm not gonna say like I regret dating this person, but like maybe this much regret. I don't usually regret anything in my life, so I'm mostly joking when I say there's any regret, but there's a little bit of me that's just like I wish my past self had seen through the bullshit there. Anyway, that person was a bad friend to their friends. That is not a nice thing to do to your friends. I don't know why anyone stayed friends with this person, to be honest. Because it was a lot of people he did this to. However, these things being a threat is also still information about like the quality of the connection that you have. Now, my friend, my ex-boyfriend swooping in when like relationships were really in a bad way and kind of like poking at them to make sure they stayed in a bad way is using my heightened or the other women's heightened emotional states of the stress of this relationship falling apart to manipulate us, essentially. Okay, coming back to this Paladin Hulk, you know who was always looking at people inappropriately? King Lear. I love it. I love it. All right, Reverend Mort, I am mostly amused by the fact that this tactic is the exact one alpha male power chauvinist types accuse betas of and say never works. Yeah. Well, he apparently was harboring the exact same mentality as those guys. Aradin, I mean, it is possible that those two friends would talk things through and then be able to continue hanging out, all three of them, with the friend helping her to manage the crush. I think so. I mean, I think it is possible. Deceptive Mirror, whenever I read about people going after their friends' exes or the siblings of their exes, it's like there's so many people in the world. Can you please extend your dating pool or expand? I agree with you 100%. There's so many people. Why would you do this? It's going to just hurt people a lot of the time. It's just going to hurt people's feelings, and it's going to lead to things being complicated. It's going to lead to, even if people say it doesn't, it usually still makes things at least a little bit awkward. As much as possible, it's important to avoid it, I think. Okay, so I recommend reading more about this and thinking about, based off of what we know and talk about consent, based off of what we were talking about when it comes to jealousy, thinking about if you were in this friend's position, and I'm going to just share the jealousy one again because I think it's good. If you were in the friend's position where your best friend told you she has a crush on your boyfriend, how would you respond? Especially if the friend went and just listed all of these things that make your boyfriend so amazing. Now, remembering you've probably been friends with this person for like 10 years. So, what do you think about that? And I think that's a good place to stop for today. Let me see what you said, Reverend Mort. Proximity is very convenient, though. From a gross view, it's really a case of developing the initial emotional bond without the context of intimacy and this sort of getting past their guard and then leveraging that connection for intimacy. Trojan horsing your hopefully Trojan covered horse. I like the joke. And I do think and I agree with you, Rodden, as well, and Reverend Mort, that proximity is a big part of it. And also, like, it's still, I think, generally speaking, not when they're all mutual friends, right? If you want to date somebody that you haven't really been able to, and you don't really want to go too far outside your friend circle, you can ask your friends, hey, are you friends with anybody you might be able to set me up with? Because a lot of the time, you don't just have one pool of friends. You might have like multiple different people. Like you might have a coworker that you're like, oh yeah, I think this coworker and you could get along or whatever. Like that can work. And that helps with some of that proximity. But having been in friend groups where like everybody dated everybody, it gets really stressful really quickly, especially when it's just like each person has dated 2 or more people in the same friend group. It just starts to get really complicated and muddy and a lot of lines get blurred. Anyway, there are a lot of bad hot takes on this too. I do recommend looking at some of these quote tweets and thinking about it and maybe going back and thinking a little bit about that stream we did a while ago about is the internet discourse like melting everybody's brains? Because I think that there are things to think about here, which is people wanting to have the most nuanced take or the hottest take or the most extreme take, but that how that does not just stay on the internet, that does actually then affect how people reading it, and sometimes even the people writing it, actually feel about things and how they react to them. So anyway, let's stop here for today. If you don't know already, we are on a lot of social media, and we let me just bring up our website. Okay, 2 things in the chat. Let me just check what it was. Okay. Aradin, yeah, the negativity and outrage titles, and Reverend Mort. I feel like those are 2 very different things, though. It's one thing when a friend group is full of very sexually liberated slutty types, not unproblematic, but not predatory. One guy swooping in to seduce all their friends' girlfriends is both problematic and very explicitly predatory. I would agree with you, Reverend Mort. I think that if everybody is in like, slutty groups and they want to all have sex with each other and they want to like sort of relationship anarchy kind of thing, that's not problematic. But in general, sort of normie, monogamish world, it's generally speaking a bad idea. But the one place where I would say that's like always a bad idea is if your friend broke up with their ex partner and they're still in pain about it, and then you go and date that person, rough move. Okay. Anyway, check out on our website our upcoming workshops. We got a lot of good things on the schedule, and a couple I want to just highlight is we've got this accountability series starting up, which is 3 classes. Accountability processes 101, like what is an accountability process? 2 is how to create accountability pods, and then 3, we're going to dive into real world examples of accountability processes and talk about the good, the bad, the meh, the how do you know if an accountability process is actually working. And then we also have discussion groups. And then on February 7th and February 16th, we have our twice a month free consent basics classes, as well as our discussion groups. Our men's discussion group and women's discussions groups have become monthly now. So please check those out. We also have, as you can see, the trans, non-binary, and genderqueer discussion group, which which I think is also monthly, but I don't remember off the top of my head. It depended on our volunteer availability, not based off of any perceived importance. And then we should have some that are also for people with disabilities, but that also does depend on our volunteers. Anyway, setting this all aside, we have a lot of good classes coming up. I also really want to recommend this class on the 21st of February, supporting survivors of sexual trauma. And if you can't attend any particular class, a lot of them are recorded for the people who buy tickets, so you can attend them later. If you want, we also have our newsletter, and if you're digging it, we do have a Patreon if you want to support us and help keep this kind of free consent education available to people. It's got lots of great content. Ash and I have a lot of good, sorry, I didn't mean to highlight that, podcast things going on that are going to come out soon. Anyway, it was lovely to come back to the stream and hang out with you all this Sunday. Hope you all have a good rest of your weekend, and I will hopefully be able to chat with you all on Tuesday for our Tuesday stream. Bye!